Should I begin?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the first parallel session of the third International Young Folklorist Conference 2026, Vernacularity and Folk Practices, Mapping Living Traditions and the Indian Knowledge System. I am Ruchi Sahai, your anchor for this session. We have Debashri here as rapporteur and Soumya Vyas for technical assistance. This session will be chaired by Dr. C. Justin Selvaraj, Head of the Department of Fine Arts and Aesthetics, MQ University, Tamil Nadu. Dr. Selvaraj will oversee timekeeping with each presentation allocated 10 minutes. Q&A for all papers will follow at the end of the session, handled by the chair. So our first presenter is Megha Kandari, UG student from Daulat Ram College, University of Delhi, presenting Pabuji Ki Phar as a living vernacular archive, oral performances, ritual memory, and folk epistemologies in Rajasthan. Megha, please go.
Ruchi, Ruchi,
Sir.
1 second. I have asked you na to follow the final session. She is not Megha Kandari. I have shared the rectified schedule 2 times already in the group.
I'll check again, ma'am. Just 1 second. Can you
Uh-huh.
resend it, Iqbal?
Ha, I'm sending. Just wait.
Oh, sorry. Her name is
I
Megha.
have checked. I have sent. Kindly check.
Okay. Yeah, so our first presenter for the day is Megha Kumari, UG student from Mata Sundri College for Women, University of Delhi, presenting on Pabuji Ki Phar as a living vernacular archive, oral performances, ritual memory, and folk epistemologies in Rajasthan. Megha, please go ahead, and sorry for the issues earlier. Megha, you're not audible.
No, Megha, you are not audible.
Megha, can you please try leaving and joining again?
Okay, till Megha corrects herself, we may move to the next presenter. We have stipulated time frame, na?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. So our then the next presenter will be Jahira Hossain, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Sundarnath College. She will be presenting on the Adi folk tales and revival of ecological wisdom, ecocritical analysis of Mamang Dai's The Sky Queen, and Once Upon a Moontime. Jahira, please go.
Um, Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Uh, okay, thank you so much for this opportunity. I would just like to clarify that the name of my college is Surendranath College. Uh, yeah, so a very good noon to everyone present here and respected chair, sir. I will directly start with the paper. And as already mentioned, the title of my paper is The Adi Folktales and Revival of Ecological Wisdom, Ecocritical Analysis of Mamang Dai's The Sky Queen and Once Upon a Moontime. So, in recent decades, literary criticism has increasingly turned toward ecological frameworks to explore the relationship between human culture and the natural world. This critical movement, broadly termed eco-criticism, examines how literature represents nature and reflects human attitudes toward the environment. As Cheryl Glotfelty famously defines it, eco-criticism is, and I quote from Glotfelty, the study of the relationship between literature and the physical environment, unquote. In the eco-criticism reader, Glotfelty argues that literary texts must be understood in relation to the ecological contexts in which they are produced. Similarly, Lawrence Buell asserts in The Environmental Imagination that environmental thinking requires examining literary works not merely as narratives, but as ways of imagining how humans inhabit the earth. Mamang is a celebrated poet and writer from Arunachal Pradesh who belongs to the Adi community and writes in English and has made a significant contribution to the field of literary outputs from the Northwest India. She was born in Pasighat of the East Siang district and is deeply attuned to the traditional and oral culture of her people, the Adi people. Dai, the noted social and environmental activist, gave up her job in the Indian civil services for the sole purpose of working towards the preservation of the ecocultural heritage of her place. Arunachal Pradesh, one of the richest states in biodiversity and natural resources, is also rich in ethnocultural diversity and oral tradition among all the states of Northwest India. A look at the 26 major tribes that inhabit Arunachal Pradesh reveals that there is a huge cultural diversity, religious and belief systems. The ethnic and cultural diversity, together with rich biodiversity, has contributed to the richness of the indigenous knowledge system of the state. Mamang as mentioned, belongs to the Adi community and also records the experiences of cultural transformation of the Adis in her literary expression. The folk narratives of Mamang especially the Sky Queen and Once Upon a Moontime, exemplify ecological sensibility. Written primarily for younger readers, but deeply rooted in indigenous philosophy, these texts weave together Adi myths, folk tales, and cosmological beliefs. Through these narratives, Dai foregrounds the agency of nature and the spiritual interconnectedness between humans, animals, rivers, and celestial forces. In this sense, her stories reaffirm the ecological foundations of Adi identity, while simultaneously functioning as cultural archives that preserve oral traditions. By translating indigenous myths into written English narratives, Dai creates a literary space where folklore becomes both ecological philosophy and cultural memory. Her works demonstrate how mythic narratives encode environmental ethics and sustain community identity in the face of cultural transformation. Now let us look at the reflection of indigenous cosmology in the folklore as delineated in the text, The Sky Queen. The Sky Queen presents two prominent folk tales that illuminate the cosmological worldview of the Adi community. These narratives revolve around the tension between the destructive and regenerative forces in nature, embodied in Adi mythic characters such as Biri Bote and Nani Mete. The book begins with an indigenous creation narrative that offers an alternative cosmological perspective to Western origin stories. Dai writes that, and I quote, "At the dawn of life, when there was nothing but endless blue, there sprang a civilization known as Kojum Koja." Unquote. This mythical civilization represents a harmonious society that lived in close relationship with nature. The people of this civilization, Kojum Koja, they celebrated festivals, practiced communal rituals, and relied on hunting and fishing for sustenance. One of the central events of the narrative occurs during the festival of Paini, when the villagers they go for fishing and capture a mysterious fish-like creature. The elders soon recognize the creature as Biri Angur Pochumu, who is the son of Biri Bote, the powerful ruler of Silisidong, the water kingdom. Despite the water elders' warning, the younger members of the community consume the creature, and their disregard for this ancestral wisdom leads to severe consequences. Illness spreads through the community, and the bat Koru Ponsum, who witnesses the incident, reports the tragedy to the water kingdom. Enraged by the death of his son, Biri Bote declares war on the civilization of Kojum Koja. The conflict unfolds through overwhelming natural forces, storms, rain, floods, and turbulent waters. Eventually, the kingdom of water submerges the entire civilization and destroys Kojum Koja beneath the waves. The myth therefore reflects an ecological warning about the consequences of violating natural balance and disregarding traditional knowledge. Amid this destruction emerges the figure of Nani Mite, who is a celestial aunt of the Kojum Koja and who is described as the beautiful lady who floated in one day from the deep, endless skies. She survives this entire catastrophe, and she becomes the preserver of the lost civilization's cultural values. Nyani Mete spreads the songs, dances, and stories of Kojumkoja, and ensuring that its memory endures. She embodies compassion and harmony, showing kindness to all living beings, birds, animals, insects, and humans. For the Adi community, Nani Mite symbolizes hope and regeneration after ecological destruction. Her memory continues to be celebrated through festivals and oral traditions, reinforcing the idea that cultural survival depends upon remembering ancestral knowledge. Now, let us come to the next story, next text that we have in consideration, that is Once Upon a Moontime. Now, while the Sky Queen emphasizes mythic conflict and renewal, the book Once Upon a Moontime presents a collection of 4 folktales that explore the origins of the natural world. These stories are how the world was made, the story of the river, why the dove weeps, and the sun and the moon. All of these stories form a cosmological narrative that explains the creation of the earth, rivers, animals, and celestial bodies. The first story, the opening story, How the World Was Made, recounts the creation of the earth by 2 celestial brothers. And they are Lopong Rimbuche and Chom Dande, who lived in the sky and they were surrounded by water in every direction. They created human beings on earth. Though now surrounded by endless water, they cast a lotus flower upon the surface and invoked winds from 4 directions. Each wind carried dust of different colors: yellow, red, black, and mixed soil, which gradually formed the earth. The brothers then shaped the landscape into hills and valleys, giving the world its diverse geography. This creation myth reflects an ecological worldview in which natural forces collaborate to generate life. Coming to the next story, the second story, the story of the river. This story narrates the origin of the Lohit River in Arunachal Pradesh, which later becomes the Brahmaputra in Assam. According to the tale, the god
A
Techi.
small intervention.
Yes.
Can you wind up actually narrating
Okay.
the stories? You just
Yeah, sure. Can I get
it's
1 minute more?
yeah. Okay, but
Thank you.
more what is there in the discussion and another for like what is your findings like that you can mention.
All right. So yeah, so as the next story goes, due to the paucity of time, I have to cut short, as I can guess. The story of the river. No, this is about the creation of the Lohit River in Arunachal Pradesh. Right now, the third story, if we come to the third story, why the dove whips. This one explains the sorrowful call of the dove through another myth, where it is shown that the dove once served as the caretaker for the child of Doni, who is the son. And when the baby began crying, the dove tried to comfort him but failed. Now, and coming to the next story, the sun and the moon. It describes the origin of the celestial bodies, where it suggests that initially there were 2 suns and they were the children of Ipanja and Lambai. And this particular story, it refers to the indigenous faith of Doni Polo, where the sun, that is referred to as Doni, and Polo, moon, that is referred to as Polo, they function as manifestations of divine power. Now, as we can see, taken together, these 2 storybooks, the Sky Queen and Once Upon a Moontime, they demonstrate how indigenous myths, they function as ecological narratives, and they offer a counter narrative to the Western ideologies of Holy Trinity and everything. So these all these stories and the mythical connections, they emphasize the interconnectedness between humans, animals, landscapes, and celestial forces, and they also suggest the agency of nature and the different elements of nature, where rivers, mountains, winds, and all creatures, they all participate in shaping the world, which offers a counter anthropocentric worldview, where it is not only the humans who have the agency, and it is not only the humans who have the power to control the other participants of nature. So through these folktales, Mamang Dai, she is not only representing the oral traditions or the folk traditions of the Adi community, but she is also trying to articulate the philosophy, the indigenous philosophy that counters the ecological destruction, and that counters the anthropocentric hegemony of humans. So yeah, if I have to conclude, this would be the
Yeah,
Thank you
nice.
so much.
Thank you, Dr. Jahira Hossain. And I would
Thank
like
you.
to invite the next presenter. We will have among the just a request to the participants. If you have any queries or any comments on the papers, please note it down, and we will have the discussion part in the last portion of this session. Okay. So next, who will be the next presenter? Megha Kumari, or shall we go for Dr. Shanjeda Haque Meso? Is it right? Okay. Who is the next one?
So Megha is back, so maybe Megha can do it first then.
Yes, please. Megha Kumari, please go ahead. I think you have to unmute.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible now?
Audible, but it is, there is an echo.
Sir, still there?
Yeah, now is okay. Please.
You have muted yourself, Megha. Please unmute yourself.
I hope now there's no disturbance around. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Megha, and I'm the student of Mata Sundri College, University of Delhi. And my topic of presentation is Pabuji Ki Far, a living archive, a living vernacular archive, oral performances, memory, ritual memory, and folk epistemologies in Rajasthan. So it is said that Bhartasya Pratishthe Dve, Sanskritam Sanskriti Stha iti, means the pride of India is twofold, Sanskrit and culture. India is a diversified land where each region carries different stories, legends, and distinct cultural practices, particularly known as folk cultures, reflecting the socio-economic, environmental, and spiritual lives of its people. Folk culture can be described as a cultural interaction or tradition that are done at a local level and which are derived from a long-standing cultural practice. It encompasses the traditions, beliefs, and artistic expressions that are deeply rooted in the everyday lives of the communities. One of the significant form of folk culture is its oral tradition. It reflects the vital aspects, showcasing a unique tapestry of narratives, carrying history, traditions, and various forms of knowledge. Many of these knowledge systems, exist outside the formal textual traditions, shastras, and are preserved through oral narratives, lok. And while classical art forms receive institutional support and recognition, folk culture often thrives in the shadows and passed down to generations orally or through practice. The Vedas, the core of Hindu philosophy and religious life, existed in an elaborate system of oral recitation for a very long period, and later it was written or scripted. So, following with this, yeah. Recent scholarships on folklore studies and anthropology and cultural history has begun to challenge this hierarchy of cultural narratives of written records, classical texts, and folk narratives. And they have started recognizing the fact that the alternative archive of knowledge and memory can also be collected or recorded through oral narratives. So, from the mid 20th century, scholars took a fresh look at these traditions, treating them as rich, complicated culture systems. One of the prominent names that we can see is John D. Smith, who works in his the epic of Pabuji and dig into the Pabuji epic with a detailed translation and sharp analysis. Smith showed how the epic weaves through together old memories and myths, giving us a window into the world of pastoral communities, the field, observing oral traditions, and following with Komal Kothari. Uh, she spent years in the field observing oral traditions and watching folk performances. Kothari notes that oral epics like Pabuji and Dev Narayan aren't just stories. Instead, they are woven right into the Rajasthan social, cultural, and historical rituals. Elizabeth Wickett and Jyotindra Jain has also focused on how far traditions come alive in performances. They looked at the teamwork between painters, performers, and audiences. Wickett's research, for example, shows how Bhopa performers use music and dramatic gestures to bring the painted scrolls to life, turning static object into a living archive and breathing story. Later researchers have turned attention to the impact of modernization, commercialization on these folk culture practices. As we can now see, the tourism and museums and art market are changing, and it has a great impact on fur performers, as they are now making small furs, and also they are performing at governmental events and the festivals or the melas that held locally around the India and even in the globe. So, following with this, the vernacular tradition has always been native and unique to a specific place, built by individuals who belong to that place using their own local materials and processes. So, in Dante Alighieri, in his Latin treatise on vernacular discourse, said that the vernacular is transient, mysterious, and feral. It is like a wild creature whose scent is left everywhere, but which is nowhere to be seen. Rather than existing as an isolated artistic expression, such traditions function as a living archives through which communities transmit memory and identity. Pabuji ki Phad, an oral epic tradition, is one of the such example of Rajasthan, and it is the Pabuji ki Phad is also called as the wandering temple because the performers, the Bhopa and Bhopi of the Nayak tribes, wander from one place to another, from one village to another, and performs this at night. Then Phad is an art form as noted by Gitika Gupta in her work for painting a window into cultural heritage of Rajasthan, is a style of storytelling through visuals that has survived for centuries. She adds that this art pays tribute to India's rich cultural heritage and are worshipped by the Naikas and Rabri communities of Rajasthan. First scrolls, which function as a sacred object, along with device of visual storytelling and a mnemonic archive of community memory, dates back approximately to 1100 years old. Historically, it is believed to have been first commissioned by Chochu Bhatt, a devotee of Lord Devnarayan, chronologically mentor of Devnarayan's clan. And the members of the Joshi clan of the Chipa caste are traditionally involved in painting and dyeing cotton and claim to be a subgroup of Brahmins. It is believed that when this community painted the whole life of Devnarayan on the Phad, the folk deity got impressed, and then they blessed and privileged the Joshi community to make fur paintings. And since then, they are the only community making the furs for the Bhopa and Bhopi community. The Epic of Pabuji is performed in Western Thar Desert region, centering in cities such as Jaipur, Shekhawati, Jodhpur, and Jaisalmer, and emerges from a 14th century hero revered for his sacrifice to save cows. Therefore, he is worshipped by herdsmen. And Devnarayana Pabuji was a medieval hero venerated as a folk deity. He is worshipped as an incarnation of Hindu god Vishnu. There's this argument that the myths like Ramayana and Mahabharata, mythologies like mythologic epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata are vernacularized, and the Epic of Pabuji is one of the such vernacularization version of the epics. So there are different stories and legends. Like one goes with Pabuji narrates his adventures, and while doing so, he often makes us enter into different stories from Indian mythology as a character. In one adventure, for instance, he is said to have protected the sacred cattle herds of goddess Durga and is blessed by her. In another, he battles Ravan, the king of Sri Lanka. who lived beyond the Indus and brought camels as trophies of war, and then get spun off as epics as their own. The painted scroll of fur is a red textile on which the principal fantastic animals, horsemen, and myriad battle scenes from the epic are depicted along a series of horizontal planes. The
We have
iconography of fur.
left.
Sorry, sir.
We have 2 minutes left.
Okay, sir. The iconography of fur plays a crucial role in shaping the narrative performance. The fur used to be very large, with paintings of Pabuji being 13 arm lengths long and Devnarayan Ji being 30 feet long. They were painted using hard woven cores and cotton cloth, which would be dried, soaked overnight to thicken the threads, and starched with rice or wheat flour. The surface would be rubbed with moonstone for smoothing. The process and painting both use only natural goods. Colors were naturally extracted, and each had its specific purpose. Yellow was creating for outline and painting the ornaments and clothes of the deity. I would have shown the PPT, but due to some glitch, I can't share it. And to conclude, I would say that the tales of Pabuji are popular. Bhopals tell from village to village, and usually they recite 4,000 words epic by memory. And there's nothing they see and then pass on to their audience. Followed by this, the ethnographic performance includes 2 distinct modes: the Gav and Atharv. The Gav is the narrative, sung narrative, which is performed by the Bhopi or the female singer, and the Atharv is the recitative explanation followed by the performed by the Bhopas, the male priest singer. And if we see it in the contemporary times, then due to the rapid commercializations and globalization, this these types of art forms are facing certain issues. And but one thing that the Pabuji ki fur has evolved in itself, that the Bhopis now narrate their own problems, issues, and women issues like domestic violence, wife beating, and dowry, etc. problems in the sung narratives, in the Gav narratives. To conclude, Pabuji ki fur isn't just an old tradition, it's a living, breathing way of people to hold into their history and values, representing itself as a living repository of cultural knowledge. Unlike official archives that collect papers and documents, this tradition passes on memory through painted scrolls, songs, rituals, and the people who gather to watch and listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Megha.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Shanjeda Haque, Associate Professor at Gopalganj Science and Technology University, and Mohammad Somir Ali, Assistant Director at the Institute of Research Editing, with their paper on Bengali auspicious symbols in socio-business policy, environmental awareness, and its social value. Please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes,
Thank
you
you.
are.
Please give me a time. I want to share my PPT with you. Just give me a time. Is my PPT showing?
No, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon. Myself, I'm Somir Ali, co-author of this research paper, Assistant Director, Institute of Research Editing, and Shanjeda Meso, Associate Professor, Gopalganj University, Science and Technology, Dhaka, Bangladesh, worked with me as the first author. First of all, I would like to thank and express my gratitude and thanks to everyone involved in organizing today's third International Folklorist Conference. I would like to express my special gratitude to the chair of the session, Honorable Dr. Cesar Selvaraj, sir. Our research paper title is Bengali Auspicious Symbol in Socio-Business Policy, Environmental Awareness, and its Social Value. Here is the
Your presentation is not visible. I mean, it is showing click to exit full screen only. Have you started your presentation?
yes, ma'am.
But your presentation is not visible yet.
I'm so sorry. Just to give me time. I'm extremely sorry. Okay, I think there is a technical problem. Okay, I'll continue. Um, my research title is Bengali Auspicious Symbol in Socio-Business Policy, Environmental Awareness, and its Social Value. This these people have believed in various aspects of nature and as symbol of good and bad in their lives. They believe in primitive animism, taboo, and totem concept that has emerged from this. Basically, in every aspect of human daily life and livelihood, the symbol of good and bad fortune has been carried by people from generation to generation. As a result, a different stage of people's business, thus aspect of good and bad fortune have been added a great social value to their business sector. The use of this auspicious symbol in folk business and urban business has created an opportunity to preserve one's own culture on the other hand, and a new aspect of eco-friendly business has also been revealed. This symbol reveals a new aspect in socio-economic terms and identifies the environmental responsibility that people have towards the environment. In this present article, an in-depth investigation will be conducted on what kind of positive impact the auspicious symbol of Bengali folk life have had on the business sector and how they are playing an effective role in the creating environmental awareness. The persistence of beliefs in good and bad fortune deeply rooted in primitive animism. In Bengali culture, those beliefs manifest through the rich tapestry of auspicious symbol that have been transmitted through folk traditions and remains remarkable resilience in even in contemporary 21st century. Far from being more superstitious, realize that those symbols have evolved to exert significant influence on the business sector, adding substantial social value and contributing to environmental awareness. Primary objective is to conduct a deep investigation into the positive impact of auspicious symbol from Bengali folk life on the business sector, examining how those traditional cultural elements have been integrated to modern commercial practice. This research employs ecocriticism as its primary theoretical and methodological framework. Ecocriticism, originally developed in literary studies, examines the relationship between literature, culture, and natural environment. In this study, the ecocritical approach is extended to analysis, cultural symbol, and business practice, investigating how traditional Bengali auspicious symbol mediate relationship between human economic activity and environmental consciousness. The ecocritical framework is particularly appropriate for this research for several reasons. First one, cultural environmental nexus, and second, sustainability discourse, and third, interdisciplinary integrations. Bengali auspicious symbols, examining their traditional meanings, documented business application, and environmental significance. First, prawns বা shankha. Folk belief are traditionally very prevalent in the society. The conch shell occupies a central and auspicious position in Hindu religious practice, serving as a scared object with multiple symbolic and functional roles. The conch is ceremonial instrument used in religious context to create scared sound and are thought to invoke divine presence and purity environment. By relating earthly rise to transcendent spiritual realities, the conch's voice is linked to primordial cosmic vibration. Conch is observed being blown before the store opens in the morning in the hopes of making money. Shop owners think that this will help their company make money. The traditional Hindu religious worship the goddess Lakshmi as the goddess of wealth. For many years, the secular world has been accustomed to blowing corns to draw goddess Lakshmi to the home for wealthy and property growth. On the day of their company's opening, the majority of traditional Hindu businessmen are observed planning Ganesh Puja. Since Lord Ganesha is regarded as the success giver, he is worshipped prior to beginning any new project or business in order to dispel negative energy. Alpana. In Bengali culture, alpanas are used to decorate the floor and of the house. Although those days they are most frequently used in variety of commercial settings. Although alpana are primarily painted to adorn the floor of the house, the underlying context is the householder goods intention or auspicious thought. Nowadays, different as alpanas are utilized in varieties of stores in both urban and rural locations, particularly in malls, hotels, food courts, restaurants, and sari shops. In certain instances, they can be seen using geometric designs to depict both their own company items and nature sense. Alpana is frequently used as meals, weddings, and other family and social gathering. The motif of Alpana is often associated with fertility cults. This ancient tradition has given a new dimension to people's religious and aesthetics values in modern business. In Bangladesh, such as Arong, Deshi, Tati, and Patir Bibi, as well as online poetry readers such as Adim, are prime instance of this. These entrepreneurs have been seen that Alpana has a great deal of social value. They have added a new dimension of the themes of Bengali sign and food and good fortune by relating this value of common people to commerce. Mango leaves. Mango leaves are used in purification and are considered an auspicious emblem in traditional Hindu culture. As a result, the wider Bengali culture context makes the symbolic use of mango leaves more apparent. In many South Asian nations, including Bangladesh, Nepal, and India, mango leaves are utilized for purification and purity maintenance. The use of mango leaves in business is also justified by the idea of purification, enhancing aesthetics appeal, and religious belief. Mango leaf chain garland are used to adorn stores, particularly in traditional commercial buildings. Mangal Ghat. One of the artistic expression of West Bengal ceramic culture is Mongol Ghat. Mongol Ghat presence is seen as fortune. In modern times, Mongol Ghat is also present in commercial buildings. Mongol Ghat can be found at a number of traditional business establishments in Kathmandu, Nepal, and several Indian districts. They think this will lead to success in business. Along with the religious values, an ecological field is created in this business sector by the original environmentalist method of preserving water by filling the Mongol Ghat with water and covering it with mango leaves and green coconut. Banana leaves. Banana trees produce a lot of fruits and reproduce easily. Thus, it is the customary to use banana trees, leaves, and bananas to decorate the bridal pavilion at weddings. This is done so that the newly weds can become fertilized as banana trees and procreate. Nowadays, many stores have artificial banana trees as decorations. The banana tree is socially significant emblem of good fortune, is also helping to shape environmentally friendly corporate practice. Betel leaf. In accordance with this wedding custom, a number of business are conducting business by using different metals to create betel leaf symbol. Images of betel leaves crafted from gold and silver are displayed for sale in West Bengal, India. Additionally, some people use the Rexin method to maintain the alpana associated with this auspicious vision in order to preserve their memories of the wedding. Paddy seeds. The Bengali calendar and festival system are structured around the rice growing cycle, also connected to the
Sir.
fertility cult.
Well, to your time.
Okay.
Now.
Okay. And this, lastly, the Bengali auspicious symbol a rich cultural resource that has a great deal of potential to support social value, environmentally sensitive business operations, and sustainable business practice in 21st century. They provide encouraging models for fusing traditional knowledge with current environmental and economic issues, and their continuous in the uses of adoption show cultural vitality in order to ensure that traditional knowledge system are respected and mobilized in the quest of environmental and social well-being. Future research and policy development should acknowledge and promote this culturally grounded approaches to sustainability. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Somir. Next, we have Sania Nas, research scholar from Aligarh Muslim University on epic narratives and moral epistemology, analyzing the role of Ram Leela and Ras Leela in the folk traditions of Western Uttar Pradesh. Over to you, Sania.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Just a minute. Let me share my screen with you all. I think there is a technical glitch. Give me just a minute. I don't know what's wrong with it. I'm not able to share my screen. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. You can present even without.
Anyway, you may continue with your speech.
All right. So, good afternoon to all of you. I am Saninas, a research scholar from Aligarh Muslim University. My paper is titled as Epic Narratives and Moral Epistemology, Ramlila and Raslila in the Folk Traditions of Western Uttar Pradesh. This study emerges from an engagement with folk performance traditions not merely as devotional or ritual practices, but as living epistemic systems through which communities articulate moral reasoning, ethical conduct, and emotional regulation. By situating Ramlila and Raslila within the framework of moral epistemology and Indian knowledge systems, the paper seeks to reposition folk theatre as a legitimate and dynamic site of knowledge production. This was gonna be my second slide, but I'm not able to share it with you all. So let me draw your attention to background and rationale of the study. The folklore of Uttar Pradesh is deeply rooted in narratives of heroism, morality, romance, and sacrifice. These narratives are sustained through vibrant performative traditions that adapt classical epics into lived community practices. Ramlila and Raslila, though grounded in the Ramayana and the life of Krishna, go far beyond religious reenactment. They function as communal classrooms for moral and cautionary teaching where ethical values are collectively learned and internalized. These traditions preserve not only ethical values but also cultural memory and regional identity, particularly in rural and semi-urban context of Western Uttar Pradesh, where folklore continues to shape everyday social life. Here, I'd like to talk about folklore as knowledge system. The term folklore was coined in 1846 by William John Thoms to replace the term popular antiquities. UNESCO defines folklore as traditional cultural expressions that are transmitted from generation to generation, constantly recreated by communities in response to their environment, interaction with nature and history, and which provide them with a sense of identity and continuity. Further, there is, I guess he's a folklorist, Shahabuddin Ahmed, he has observed that folklore literature represents the oral and written expressions of a culture passed down from generation to generation through informal channels, serving as a repository of collective wisdom and identity. Building upon this understanding, Indian folk tradition may be viewed as dynamic systems of knowledge production that mediate between memory, morality, and community life. Performative traditions thus operate as informal moral classrooms, independent of institutional learning structures. In this part, I'm going to talk about Ramlila and Raslila in Western Uttar Pradesh. In our Western Uttar Pradesh, Ramlila and Raslila occupy a central position in the cultural landscape. While these performances draw heavily from classical mythology, they are shaped by vernacular language, folk music, gesture, and active community participation. By blending classical narratives with local dialects and regional sensibilities, these traditions transform epic stories into accessible moral frameworks embedded within everyday life. As Dwivedi and Dwivedi note, Ramlila and Raslila are mainly studied from theological and literary standpoints, while their folk renditions often escape scholarly attention. This paper addresses that gap by foregrounding their epistemic and pedagogical functions. Here, I'd like to talk about research objectives and questions. The study is guided by three primary objectives. First, to examine Ramlila and Raslila as vernacular system of moral knowledge, analyzing how they transmit ethical values, cultural memory, and community-based epistemologies. Second, to analyze the localization of epic narratives through folk performances, particularly language performativity and thematic continuities with traditions such as Birha, Chaiti, and Dhola. Third, to evaluate the contemporary relevance of these traditions, especially in relation to digital mediation and their alignment with Indian knowledge systems and the educational vision of NEP 2020. Accordingly, the central questions concerns how moral knowledge is produced and transmitted through folk performances and how epic narratives are reshaped through vernacular practices. So this part discusses vernacular language and localization. Vernacular language constitutes the foundational medium through which folk traditions articulate community knowledge, ethical values, and cultural memory. In Western Uttar Pradesh, vernacularity is not merely linguistic, but it's epistemic. Ramlila and Raslila exemplify this vernacular epistemology through their extensive reliance on regional dialects, idiomatic expressions, performative speech, and improvisation that resonate with the lived realities of local audiences. Dialogues are frequently adapted to include local metaphors, contemporary references, and culturally specific humor. Through this vernacular mode, classical epic narratives move beyond textual authority and enter the domain of lived moral knowledge rooted in everyday social experiences. This part is going to be about thematic continuities in folk tradition. Thematic continuities between Ramlila and Raslila and other regional folk traditions such as Birha, Chaiti, and Dhola further demonstrate the integrated nature of vernacular knowledge. In Western Uttar Pradesh, Birha basically is mood-based and the basic theme revolves around the separation of lover and his beloved. Actually, Birha in Hindi means separation. Similarly, Chaiti is a musical form which is derived from folk songs, and its theme mostly revolves around the festivities of Holi and Ram Navami. Whereas Dhola is a song of an absent lover sung to several distinct melodies and metrical forms. Despite their formal and performative differences, these traditions share narrative concerns with love, separation, endurance, and heroic sacrifice, reinforcing a common moral imagination across genres. Through vernacular language and performance, folk tradition thus create a shared ethical universe that transcends individual texts and sustains cultural continuity. This would be my slide 8, and it is about moral epistemology in folk performance. Moral epistemology concerns how moral knowledge is acquired, internalized, and practiced within a community. In folk traditions, moral epistemology doesn't emerge through formal instruction or codified doctrine. Instead, moral knowledge is produced through narrative repetition, embodied performance, and effective engagement. Ramlila and Raslila function as moral classrooms where ethical principles are communicated collectively and experientially. Learning here is experiential rather than doctrinal, and ethics emerge through emotional identification and communal reflection. At this point, I would discuss ethical frameworks in Ramlila and Raslila. In Ramlila, performances moral instruction is structured around ideals of duty, restraint, sacrifice, and justice. The character of Rama operates as a moral exemplar whose actions embody ethical discipline and social responsibility. Repeated enactments of exile, loyalty, and righteous struggle reinforce moral reasoning through emotional engagement rather than abstract explanation. Raslila, by contrast, foregrounds emotional ethics, narratives of love, longing, and devotion are framed within ethical boundaries that emphasize balance, surrender, and emotional regulation rather than unrestrained desires. Together, these traditions construct complementary moral frameworks rooted in lived emotional experience. This section focuses on folk traditions and Indian knowledge systems. Indian knowledge systems encompass diverse modes of knowing that extend beyond textual and classical traditions to include oral, performative, and community-based epistemologies. Ramlila and Raslila are crucial components of these systems. As applied folklore, they integrate ethics, emotion, social order, and cultural memory into lived practice. Their pedagogical structure aligns closely with the National Education Policy 2020, which advocates experiential learning, value-based education, and cultural rootedness as alternatives to abstract and standardized pedagogical models. This section deals with digital mediation and contemporary challenges.
Tania, you have only 1 minute left. Kindly try to wrap up within it.
All right. So I'm just concluding it. So to conclude, this study demonstrates that Ramlila and Raslila in Western Uttar Pradesh function as dynamic vernacular systems of moral epistemologies embedded within Indian knowledge systems. Through vernacular language, performative adaptations, and community participation, these traditions transmit ethical values, preserve cultural memory, and sustain collective identity. Far from being residual or purely devotional practices, they actively produce moral knowledge through effective engagement and embodied learning. Preserving these living traditions, therefore, requires recognition of grassroots performers as custodian of knowledge. Integrating folk traditions into contemporary educational and cultural discourse contributes to a more inclusive, decolonized, and ethically responsive understanding of knowledge production in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sania. Are Devashri and Tanevi there? No, not Devashri. The next presenter, Devashri. All right, then we'll move on to the next presenter. So the next presenter is Ritika Chakrabarti, student from Miranda House, University of Delhi. She'll be presenting on the circular archive, mapping the vernacular knowledge of Dhamel. Ritika, please begin.
Yeah, thank you very much. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen. Just let me know if it's visible. Is it?
Yeah, it's visible. You
Yeah.
may begin.
Okay. Just a second. Yeah. Is it clear? Am I audible, visible, everything's fine?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. A very good afternoon to each one of you and the respective chairs, sir. My presentation, as it says, that the circular archive mapping the vernacular knowledge of Dhamai. So let me begin with a small question first. When we think about knowledge systems, we usually imagine books, archives, or universities. But what if knowledge is also preserved through songs, body, and collective memory? Across many communities, traditions survive not through written text, but through oral performance and shared cultural practices. My presentation explores one such tradition called Dhamai, a women-centric folk song and dance tradition from the Sylhet region of undivided Bengal. The central argument of this paper is that Dhamai should not be viewed merely as a folk performance, but as a vernacular epistemology, a local system of knowledge transmitted through orality, embodiment, and collective memory. Instead of reading the definition here, let me briefly describe what the performance actually looks like. Imagine a group of women standing in a circle, clapping rhythmically and singing traditional songs together. This is Dhamai. It is typically performed during weddings and communal celebrations among Sylheti Bengali communities, particularly in the Barak Valley of Assam. The songs often reflect themes of love, marriage, kinship, and emotional transitions in women's lives. So, what appears to be a festive performance is also a collective cultural space where social experiences and emotional knowledge are shared. Coming to the historical context, Dhamal originated in the Sylhet region, an area historically rich in oral folk tradition. However, the partition of India in 1947 divided this region and caused large-scale migration of Sylheti Bengalis to areas such as Barak Valley in Assam. Despite displacement, the tradition survived. What is remarkable is that it survived not through written documentation, but through memory, performance, and communal practices. This demonstrates how oral traditions function as repositories of culture, memory, and identity, even after historical disruption. Research argument says, from my side, the vernacular epistemology. This phrase is central to my paper. What I propose is that Dhamal should be understood as a vernacular epistemology. In other words, it represents a local system of knowledge production. The knowledge embedded in Dhamal is transmitted through, as I said, orality, embodiment, collective memory. Through these processes, Dhamal preserves knowledge about gender roles, relationships, and cultural identity. First, coming to this, vernacularity as a local knowledge system, the concept of orality developed by Walter Wong explains how knowledge in oral culture is preserved through speech, memory, rhythm, and repetition rather than written text. Secondly, performance theorists such as Richard Schechner emphasize that performances are not only artistic events but also social practices that transmit cultural meaning. Theorists like Diana Taylor distinguishes between the archive, and which consists of written records, and the records which are embodied, which includes practices like dance, ritual that transmit memory through the body. Dhamal functions precisely within the repertoire where knowledge survives through movement, rhythm, and collective performance. The study also draws on subaltern studies, particularly the work of Ranajit Guho and Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak, who emphasize recovering the voices of marginalized communities. Finally, scholars such as Kyongo and Dipesh Chakraborty encourages us to recognize indigenous cultural practices as valid knowledge systems rather than merely folklore. Together, these theories allow us to understand Dhamal as an embodied, oral, and subaltern form of knowledge production. I have included 4 interdisciplinary approaches for academic perspectives. First, cultural studies help us examine how everyday cultural practices reflect identity, power relations, and community memory. Secondly, folklore studies allow us to understand Dhamal as a living folk tradition transmitted through oral performance and communal participation. Third, feminist theory provides a lens to analyze how women express their lived experiences, emotional narratives, and social realities through this tradition. Finally, performance studies focuses on the embodied aspect of cultural expression, showing how gestures, rhythm, and bodily movement act as carriers of cultural knowledge. Together, these disciplines help us understand Dhamai as simultaneously cultural practice, a folk tradition, a gendered expressive space, and an embodied knowledge system. Normally, when we think about archives, we imagine libraries and historical documents. But you can see in that picture that traditions like Dhamai, the body itself becomes the archive. The rhythms, the movements preserve cultural knowledge. Dhamai is primarily performed by women, and the songs often reflect marriage, separation, kinship, and emotional transitions in women's lives. Through collective performances, women share experiences that might otherwise remain unrecorded in formal historical narratives. Thus, Dhamai becomes a shared expressive space where women narrate their life realities. The tradition is sustained largely by rural women outside formal institutions. Through performance, these women preserve everyday histories that are often absent from official archives. Dhamai, therefore, are like counter-archive of marginalized voices. Another fascinating feature of Dhamai is how it is learned. There are no written scripts nor fixed choreographies. Young participants simply observe elders, join the circle, and gradually internalize the songs and movements. Knowledge here is transmitted through participation rather than instruction. Urbanization and migration have reduced traditional community gatherings. As we all know today, Dhamai often appears in stage performances and cultural festivals. While this helps preserve visibility, it also shifts the tradition from community rituals to cultural representation. For a long time, academic knowledge privileged written text and institutional archives. However, traditions like Dhamai demonstrate that knowledge can also exist through performance, emotion, and collective memory. Recognizing such practices contributes to decolonizing knowledge and expanding our understanding of epistemology. So, to conclude, Dhamai is not merely a folk dance performed during weddings. It is an embodied archive of cultural memory and women's lived experiences transmitted through oral tradition and collective performance. By recognizing such traditions as knowledge systems, we broaden our understanding of how cultures preserve history, identity, emotion, and beyond written text. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ritika. So is Devashri and Tanevi there?
Yes, ma'am, ready to present.
Okay. So yeah, now we have Devashri and Tanevi from Department of Sociology and Industrial Relations, St. Joseph's University, with their paper on a comparative study on gender plurality in folk traditions. Please go ahead.
I hope the presentation is visible.
Yes, it is. You may begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Devyashri S.A. and along with Tanai V, I will be presenting our paper titled A Comparative Study on Gender Plurality in Folk Traditions. This paper looks at how many traditional cultures actually had space for different gender identities, which challenges the idea that gender diversity is only a modern concept. Background of the study: today, gender diversity is often seen as something new or something influenced by Western culture. Many people believe that traditional societies only recognize two genders, male and female. However, when we look at history and anthropology, we find that many cultures across the world had more flexible understandings of gender. In many cases, these identities were connected to rituals, religion, and community roles. For the objective of the study, the main aim of the study is to explore how gender diversity appears in traditional and cultural practices. First, we look at examples from different cultures. Second, we study how rituals and community recognition gives legitimacy to gender diverse identities. And third, we compare different societies to understand how gender roles work in different contexts. And finally, we conducted a survey to understand how people today think about gender diversity. Conceptual framework, like for conceptual framework, our study is based on the idea that gender is socially constructed, and this means gender is shaped by culture, society, and history, not just by biology. Another important idea is that gender can be performed through behavior, clothing, and social roles. And in many traditional societies, gender identities were connected to ritual practices and cultural traditions. Because of this, communities themselves often give legitimacy to certain gender roles. Now, case studies will be presented by Phad.
So we took several amount of case studies. So the first one we have Puvagam festival, which is held in Tamil Nadu. The festival is connected to the story of Aravan from Mahabharata. So during this festival, we have transgender women who symbolically marry Aravan and later mourn his death to ritual practices. And for many participants, this festival gives religious as well as cultural recognition to their identity. But however, this recognition is often temporary because outside the festival, many still face a lot of discrimination. So for the second performance traditions for case studies, we have taken Yakshagana and Terukutta. Yakshagana is a folk tradition which is held in Karnataka, and so for both the traditions, both the folk practices, they use costumes, makeup, gestures, and voice to portray female roles. And interestingly, the audience here accepts this transformation and even appreciates it as a form of art. So we can see that in Yakshagana that women performers take male roles and male performers take up female roles, and through this, we can see that in performance spaces, gender roles can be more flexible. But outside the stage, the society may still seem to return to more rigid expectations. And for the next one, we have taken global examples from the Haque community from Central Africa and the Bugis community from Indonesia. The Haque community in Central Africa is known for having flexible gender roles. So men there participate actively in childcare and family responsibilities. And another important example is the Bugis community in Indonesia, which recognizes among 5 different gender categories. So in their culture, some of the identities even have sacred religious roles. And through these examples, we can see that gender diversity has existed in structured ways in societies. Moving on to the methodology, we have used both theoretical analysis and survey data for literature review and our survey. So we conducted a questionnaire through Google Forms to understand how people in today's world view gender diversity. And the survey asks questions about awareness of gender diversity, on acceptance of ritual traditions, and attitudes towards social inclusion. And this helped us to understand how traditional and modern perceptions can interact with each other. So moving on to the findings of the survey, many respondents were aware that gender diversity existed in many traditional cultures, which we can see in Yakshagana, we can see in Terukuttu, Puvagam, for 4 and 4/4. And many respondents were aware that gender diversity existed in traditional cultures, and their knowledge was a bit limited. Many people accepted gender diversity in ritual or cultural spaces, but they were less certain about full social acceptance. So younger participants who participated in the survey literally showed more openness towards gender diversity, while the older participant didn't, and which shows that there's a lot of a gap between symbolic respect and real social equality. To conclude our paper, gender diversity is simply not a modern idea. Many traditional societies have their own ways of recognizing different gender identities, like folk traditions, rituals, and performances. They create spaces where gender plurality could exist. And at the same time, we can see that these recognition was sometimes very limited to certain cultural contexts. And understanding these traditions help us to see that gender diversity can also be a part of cultural continuity. Thank you. Any questions?
We'll take the questions at the end, Tanay. So thank you, Tanay. Thank you, Devashri.
Thank
So
you.
moving on, next we have Shyama Bhattacharya from Uttara University, Dhaka, Bangladesh. She is presenting on Palagan as cultural memory, transmission, belief, and ritual in Bengali folk performance styles. Over to you, Shyama.
Thank you, everyone. Hello, good day. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
I am Shyama Bhattacharya. I am from Bangladesh, Uttara University. Please allow me 5 seconds to share my presentation.
Yes, please.
Share option जानना लो.
You can share your screen if you want.
Is it okay?
Your screen is not shared yet, Shama. Try again. Otherwise, you can begin even without it.
Okay, just 1 more minute. Sorry. I'm starting my paper. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. The title of my presentation is Palagan as Cultural Memory, Belief, Ritual, and Transmission in Bengali Folk Performance. Traditional ceremony, rituals, belief, and generational transmissions are all integral components of the traditional Bangla Natya, which is folk performance, Palagan, and guarantee the survival of folk culture. It's also a type of collective ritual which establishes the shape of folk behavior. The regulator of a society is its cultural memory. It is essentially a people's collective experience, awareness, and comprehension. Palagan and its performance practices are intimately related to cultural memory and transmission. Through the performance of Pala, it contributes to the development of a nation's or group's general features. My research problem is the current generation of Bangladesh and its lack of cultural and collective memory. In the age of artificial intelligence and digital entertainment, there is lack of collective consciousness, lack of women's freedom, lack of social value, discriminatory viewpoint, lack of authentic history knowledge, lack of simplicity and modesty, lack of naturalism, and lack of cultural identity. This paper's primary objective is to investigate how belief, ritual, and transmission function as cultural memory in the performance of Palagan. The secondary objective is how the folk communities' common sense, beliefs, and consciousness serve as Palagan's main theme. How rather than using official religion, the folk group uses its secular rites as a kind of Palagan, and how the tradition community's consciousness is passed down from one generation to the next. Many scholars have studied the culture, acting style, performance styles, transmission process, origin, belief, story, etc. But there hasn't been any particular research on how the beliefs, rituals, and transmissions that are part of the Palagan performance style function as cultural memory. This paper is in qualitative methods. According to this method, the theme, context, and acting style of Palagan have been analyzed. The present study will use the theories of Maurice Holbrook's collective memory theory, John Assman's cultural memory theory, Walter J. Ong's orality and literacy theory, Richard Bauman's performance theory, Pierre Bourdieu's habitus and embodied memory, and Pierre Nora's realms of memory. This discussion now discuss It discusses how a group's belief changes in ritual and becomes cultural memory through transmission. Belief gives meaning and moral structure. Ritual enacts and renews shared memory. Transmission carries memory across generations. Together, they sustain cultural identity and historical consciousness. In Palagan performances, the Gayan expresses the beliefs and consciousness of a folk community through secular storytelling. The audience feels a sense of unity with the Gayan's reflective performance. Through the guru-disciple tradition, these beliefs and rituals are transmitted across generations, creating an integrated cultural memory. The performance of Palagan proudly portray the spirit of the Bengali country are based on belief, memory, and transmission. In this digital age, Palagan's cultural memory inspires us to non-communal consciousness, women's empowerment, oppose gender discrimination, practice social values, simplicity, modesty, language protection, preservation, authentic history, non-discriminatory viewpoint, naturalism, pantheism, and to determine our cultural identity. Palagan plays a significant role in preserving cultural memory through the transmission of beliefs, rituals, language, and traditions. It connects generations and creates a shared sense of unity and cultural identity. For this research, I have taken theory and ideas from Selim Al-Din, Yusuf Hassan Orko, Jan Asman, Badiuজ্জামান, Richard Bauman, Pierre Bourdieu, Maurice Holbert, Shamsuzzaman Khan, Walter J. Ong, Nicholas Pitts, Dinesh Chandra Sen, and Ahmed Sharif. Thank you.
Thank you, Shama. So we now open the floor for Q&A on all presentations. Please raise your hand or use the mic.
Our session is open now. If any of you have any questions regarding any of the presentations, presenters are here. You can directly interact with them. I think there are not questions. I mean, no questions for this session. Anyway, I request the anchor to wrap up.
Then can we, I would like to invite our chair, Dr. Selvaraj, to share any final thoughts or reflections on the session, please, Dr. Selvaraj. Okay.
Actually, due to some technical glitch, Dr. Selvaraj got disconnected. That's why I have already written in the WhatsApp group that the anchor needs to conclude the session.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, ma'am. Okay, then. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Debashri. Thank you, Somir. Thank you, Samriddhi. Thank you for your presence and engagement today. Thank you.